today up at Lindholm Fishery. We're on Loco Lake, which is the big fish water for this fishery. We're going to be fishing the Pellet Waggler today. I'm going to show you how I would approach a swim in a match or a pleasure session. I'm going to show you the rods I'm going to be using, the reels I'm going to be using, my general terminal tackle setup, the bait and how I feed, and generally just how I can come into my peg, catch fish from the off and make sure I can keep catching them all day and make sure we can keep that rod bent. It's a good fish. So pellet waggler fishing, obviously we're going to be fishing hard pellet on a band. I wouldn't go anywhere without 6 millers. You know, they're the easiest bait to fish with. They catapult really well. You can get them probably 30 meters without a problem. I've also got some 8 millers here. They make a great sound when they go in the lake, so they're super good at attracting fish into the area. Also, if the wind gets up, if you draw a peg and you're fishing comfortably at one distance, the wind gets up in your face and you need to keep them fish at the same distance, switch over to 8 millers and you can still keep feeding the swim really confidently when some of your competitors might not even think about bringing a size bigger pellet or even having a heavier setup to chase those fish. So 6 mil pellet is what I'm going to be feeding. Probably be fishing 8 mil pellet on the hook just because of that lovely noise it makes when it goes in the water, but not to say that I won't switch it over to a 6 miller if I feel like I'm going to get more bites or if it's falling through the water at a different pace. One thing to remember when you're pellet waggler fishing is catapults. Now, I've gone through 2 or 3 catapults in a match before without a problem. You don't have time to re-elasticate them, so you need to have, you know, at least 3 catapults on hand, and not all the same either. You know, this one here is perfect for, you know, perfect for 6 millers out to about 30 meters, and a few 8 millers a little bit further. But once those fish push past that point and get further out into the lake, you're going to need something a bit more powerful that you're going to be able to get that bait out nice and accurate as well. It's not about just getting bait out into the lake. You want to make sure you can group it around your float really nicely. You know, you might only be feeding 3 or 4 pellets at a time, but being able to put that in a 4 or 5 foot area every time to keep them fish concentrated is going to mean that that float's going to go under more often and you're going to put more weight in the net. About that for a nice early morning mirror. That's why you need strong gear. You know, you can't be messing around with these for too long in a match. You want to get them under control really quickly in the net, get back out there. Yeah, so plenty of fish out there now. Just started off closer in, probably 25 meters. I don't think you need to go a huge amount of distance out to start with. The fish seem to be quite close in. In a match condition, those fish should be pushing away, definitely out towards the middle of the lake, I think. Just fishing about a 4 foot hook link on. Not that I'm catching fish at 4 foot because they're taking the pellet really quickly, but you just want that pellet to be landing away from the splash of the float. I think they're scared of the float, but they're attracted by the pellet. You don't always need to be fishing super shallow. Look at this stocky little guy. So this first setup I'm using, the fish are a bit closer in at the moment, so I'm imagining start of the match, first few hours, the fish haven't backed off completely yet with the bankside disturbance. So I'm using an 11-foot Super Team float rod, which is a great little rod, great length for this distance, beautiful action, really nice under the rod tip when you get those bigger fish. I'm fishing a 2000 size Shakespeare Mach 2, perfect size reel for this rod. Really balanced little setup, which is what you need because you're going to be holding the rod all day, and you are poised for action. You're not sitting there with it on your knee like this, like you would be if you were fishing on the deck in winter. You are poised for action at any moment. So, you know, if you imagine you're holding a heavy setup, that's going to take its toll throughout the day. And you don't want that, because you need your arm to be ready for when you hook that bigger fish. I'm only fishing 25 meters out at the moment, probably. The fish are showing themselves, so you know I know where to put the bait. But I can see that there is a lot of fish also cruising, maybe about 40 meters out. And I think that after a while, the fish that I'm catching now possibly might push out to join those other fish. Well, that would definitely happen in a match situation, I think, anyway. So I'd change this lighter setup, or this shorter setup that I've got now, over to my heavier setup, which I'll talk to you about in a bit, just to try and chase those fish out into the lake, because you could end up sitting there, you know, picking off the odd fish at close range, where you could be bagging up just by going that little bit further out. Oh, he's still a bit lively. Great little hard fighting commons or F1s. Build a weight really big with it, quickly with these. Good job. When that bait goes in for the first time, you want to stop the line on the edge of the spool and feather that bait in, because you want the bait to flip past the float and lay itself out beautifully. And you want to get that bail arm shut as quickly as you possibly can. I shut the bail arm manually because I find it's a bit quicker than it is by reeling it. And the reason for that is the fish are going to come to the sound of that plop immediately. So you're going to get bites instantaneously, and you want to be fishing as soon as that bait hits the water. Sometimes the rod is, you know, the float's gone before the ripples have disappeared from around the float, and like that. And you need to be on your game. You can't have any slack line at all, because if that fish takes the bait as soon as it's hit the water, you want it to hook itself against the rod tip. You don't want it to, you know, take the bait and spit it out because you didn't have a tight line. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have that tight line between you and the float. And what I'll do, I will only cast out and leave the rig out there for probably a maximum of 30 seconds. I'll then give it a little bit of a twitch and then come back in and then go out again. You know, those fish are taking this bait as soon as it's hitting the water or as it's falling through the water column. Not very often you'll get a fish taking a static bait just hanging in the water column. So I've switched over to a heavier setup now. The fish have just kind of pushed away from me a bit. I've probably had a dozen fish and the fish have started backing off. I can't be as accurate with that little 6 gram waggler as I want to be at range. So I've stepped up my tackle. So I've now put a 13-foot power float on, Super Team power float. I've kept a similar size reel, so a 2000 size reel, but this is the Mach 3. Same main line, 020, same hook link, 018, same hook pattern, size, which is a 12, down to a band. And I've got 3 foot there, very similar setup, but I've got a 10 gram waggler on, loaded waggler. Now the fish are probably, I would say they're 40 meters out, which I can get to without a problem with this catapult and this setup. I've hooked this fish at range on the bigger setup, and I knew there were some big fish out there because I could see them coming out the water. This one feels like a really good fish, unless it's foul hooked, which is, you know, which does happen when you're fishing up in the water, because the fish are competing. You know, they're coming to the splash of the float and the pellet, they're darting through the swim. But this feels very heavy. He's starting to kite left. So as I said, with this bigger setup, I'm able to control that fish a lot easier. If I was on an 11-foot rod now, I'd feel really wary about how fast and how quickly this, how fast and how hard this fish is pushing to the left. You know, I've got to be mindful of these trees to my left as well. I don't know if they go into the water or not. So I just want to keep the rod low, nice and easy. You know, guide the fish towards you until he's under the rod tip like that. And then, there we go. Nice mirror. Caught at range. So as I thought, I was catching loads of fish short range. Then they pushed out a little bit, and I had a feeling the bigger fish were sat out the back. I could see them, and this is the first one I've had, and he's really given a good account for himself. Nice mirror, looks about 8 pound, might be a little bit bigger. Lovely, nice lively fish, caught at range on the Pellet Waggler. Beautiful fish to finish with. This is what you want to be catching, and just if you have a choice of setups as you're fishing, then you'll be able to follow these fish around your peg and make sure that you can keep catching all day long.